What We Cannot See Season 2 Intended Ending Part 1. The last episode released in the second season of What We Cannot See covered the progress of Sukard, Dakmia, Goldak, and the other mock soldiers of Sukard's design. They were on their way to the Minifig Fortress to join with them. As Dakmia guided the team, they were ambushed by a Bionicle Mystica patrol, and Dark Assassin led the Mystica soldiers away, allowing the rest to escape. This would cost Dark Assassin his life, and Goldak explained that Mox value service to their creators, and every Mox dream is to die for their creator. The episode ends with the team continuing on their journey, now down one member. The rest of Season 2 was meant to play out rather predictably. Dakmia, Sukard, and the remaining Mox eventually made it safely to the Minifig Fortress of New Gutanoa, but would arrive to a base in turmoil. Before Icarax and Mike arrived at New Gutanoa, the minifigs stationed there under the rule of the veteran commander Carl put a great deal of hope and faith in the return of Antros, the heroic protagonist from the first season, who sacrificed himself to destroy Gavla. Although Antros failed in defeating Gavla, the minifigs of New Gutanoa believed that Antros was not dead, and that he would return once again, just as Gavla did, to destroy Gavla, now the Empress, and save the minifig race forever. One reason the minifigs identified their own fate with Antros was that Antros was originally a minifigure himself, transformed into a Bionicle in Season 1. Commander Carl began propagating a kind of cult around Antros, and after so many years of living in New Gutanoa and producing rhetoric about Antros, he became a true believer in the idea of Antros' return. The Antros cult kept the morale of the minifigs very high, though inflaming them with unfounded facts. Mike was always a realist. As he came from New Gutanoa, he knew about the cult, and when he arrived at New Gutanoa again, he openly dismissed the idea of Antros' return to the public as mere fantasy. This caused mass panic, and the bizarre suicide of Commander Carl, who felt that without the promise of Antros' return, the minifigs had nothing to live for. Several other minifig citizens committed suicide as well. The ones that remained were in absolute despair. Mike decided enough was enough, and asserted himself as the new leader of New Gutanoa. He firmly put the citizens in their places, telling them all, "Look at you! You're doing Gavla's work for her! If we do not cling to whatever hope we have left, it is not on the battlefield that the Empress will defeat us, but right here at home. Antros may not be coming back, but he would be ashamed of all of you for depending upon him for victory. Even without Antros, we have an equally mighty ally with us still, the Lone Saboteur in the flesh. Now pull yourselves together. We must make ready for Gavla's impending attack." Following Mike's speech, and the war preparations he began conducting throughout New Gutanoa, Dakmia, Sukard, and Sukard's Mox made it to New Gutanoa safely. At first, the minifig sentries were cautious, and prepared to attack the Bionicle party. However, they recognized that leading the group was Dakmia, a trusted and ever-loyal agent of the minifig resistance, who had been long thought dead. Mike, who knew Dakmia long before Season 2 began, introduced her to the group. Sukard felt extremely anxious about his true identity being revealed to the minifigs, as he was formerly the monarch, responsible for the genocide of thousands of minifigs. However, Dakmia introduced him as Sukard, and then presented Sukard's Mox as willing defenders of the minifig cause. Mike and Icarax filled Dakmia and her crew in on their end of the story, while Dakmia and Sukard did the same, excluding the fact that Sukard was actually the monarch all along, but with an extreme change of heart. During this, Dakmia, who had previously never met Icarax, becomes slightly fascinated with him, even to the point of romantic infatuation. She remained collected about it and did not reveal anything. Eventually, the minifig sentry post began picking up unique Bionicle life readings on their scanners. Indeed, they informed New Gutanoa and the military that the enemy was approaching. The very small but disciplined and well-equipped minifig militia took its defensive positions outside the door to New Gutanoa, while Icarax, Dakmia, Sukard, and Sukard's Mox formed up behind the minifigs for support. A moment of tension ensued, where the minifig defenses wait patiently for the Bionicle army to appear, but when the Bionicle soldiers did eventually show, the entire defensive force of New Gutenoa was alarmed to see that not only were the Bionicle soldiers very small compared to the mighty Mystica legions, but they were only 6 of them. Worried that the Empress had a sinister plan up her sleeve, the soldiers remained vigilant. When the minifig militia began firing upon the Bionicles, the Battle of New Gutenoa began. The minifigs fired all of their weaponry upon the 6 Bionicle soldiers, but were surprised to see how tough their armor was. Icarax managed to strike a soldier down, but only after many powerful hits from his battle staff. Eventually, though, all 6 Bionicle soldiers were slain, and the minifig resistance's military cheered triumphantly. Their cheers broke, however, when the exact same Bionicle soldiers they defeated returned back up the stairs. The resistance was terrified. The Empress had cloning facilities, and when a soldier died she was able to instantly replicate them. However, her cloning devices were located in her lair. It was as if these 6 Bionicle soldiers replicated themselves just outside the battlefield. The minifigs began firing yet again, and Dacmea, Icarax, Sucard, and the rest of the Mox threw themselves into the fray to defend their minifig allies. Once again, they took out the 6 soldiers one by one, but quickly after each soldier was killed, a clone of it seemed to reappear at the other end of the battlefield. The group defending New Gutenoa was holding itself, but it was taking damage against the regenerating enemy. Eventually, Icarax went far enough outward to look down the stairs that he had to climb in order to reach New Gutenoa. 6 canisters were placed at the bottom of the stairs, and from them emerged new, fully revived soldiers who rapidly ascended up the stairs to strike Icarax and prevent him from threatening their ideal position. Icarax fell back to the defensive positions to continue the fight. These soldiers, unknown to the minifig resistance, were the Empress's newest creations, capable of recloning in the field, reducing travel time substantially. They were called the Stars, and the Empress gave the Stars one special ability, a last resort in the face of danger. The commander of the Stars, Tahu, would be equipped with a specialized set of armor, separated into 6 pieces, that, once placed on him, would give him the ability to ignite at will, and eventually explode in a destructive blast that could easily wipe out the force defending New Gutenoa. Tahu told the soldiers that since the battle was essentially a stalemate, they needed to use the explosive armor to wipe the minifig resistance and capture New Gutenoa. Tahu then equipped himself with the armor, and, escorted by the other 5, climbed back up the stairs to deliver their final blow. Up at the defenses, Icarax told his fellows about what he saw down below, and the only way to win the battle was to destroy the canisters at the bottom of the stairs. The question was how, and a debate began as to what the cost of such a maneuver would be in terms of lives. It was then that Goldak alerted the men stationed at New Gutenoa that the 6 Stars had returned, except this time the central soldier was wearing glistening golden armor that was glowing with intense brightness. As the minifig soldiers fired their blasters at the glowing Bionicle soldier, they noticed that their weapons were practically useless. Icarax looked over at Goldak, who seemed in great discomfort. Sucard was about to ask what was on Goldak's mind, when Goldak shrugged him away. Dacmea was the closest Bionicle warrior to the glowing Bionicle, and she yelled back to her comrades, "I think he's gonna explode!" The entire group looked horrified, and the minifigs concentrated every bit of their firepower upon that one Bionicle. Sucard looked at Goldak, who began breathing heavily. It was then that Goldak suddenly and without any warning leaped over the defensive barricade and directly in front of the glowing Bionicle. Sucard screamed in shock, "Goldak, what are you doing?" Goldak looked back briefly and replied,
"What every Mach is born to do."
Goldak then, using his superior size, charged into Tahu and clutched him against his body. Rapidly, Goldak dashed with Tahu in his grasp past every Bionicle soldier and began heading directly off of the edge of the stairs. Tahu wreathed endlessly, hoping to escape, but Goldak's hold was too strong. Tahu's armor was glowing dangerously bright, and his temperature was rapidly rising. As soon as Goldak reached the edge of the stairs, he jumped into the air, and, holding Tahu tight in his arms so that he could not flee, sent himself and Tahu hurtling toward the canisters. Tahu had long since activated his explosion sequence, and right before Goldak and Tahu hit the ground, Tahu exploded. The blast was so massive it could be seen all the way up in the stairs. The explosion vaporized Tahu and Goldak instantly, and immediately destroyed the canisters at the bottom of the stairs. As the stars had their life forces attached to the canisters, the destruction of these canisters caused the remaining 5 stars to shrivel up and dissolve into thin air. There was no denying that the Battle of New Gutenoa had ended in the Resistance's victory. Everyone, Bionicle and Minifig, returned to the New Gutenoa base to celebrate their stunning victory. However, Dakmia, Icarax, Sukard, and Sukard's remaining Mox were not joining in. Sukard began crying, and both Dakmia and Icarax put their hands on his shoulders. Sukard said, "I made Mox to help me, not to see them die solely to protect me." New Gutenoa was now separated into polar opposites. One side of the base was cheering in great ecstasy, while the other was saddened by the loss of a great ally.